Hello my hojos, and welcome back to the series on YouTube that Warner Brothers could never cancel for a tax write-off, making the Shonen Jump to Shoujo. That's right, Zaslav, you can never get me. I'm like the Roadrunner, and you're like Wile E. Coyote. Meet me, motherfucker. Now that I've killed any future opportunities with WB, I can officially say we are back with the 5th installment of my series making the Shonen Jump to Shoujo. The series where I take popular shonen and seinen manga and recommend shoujo and josei series that are similar to them. This is all in hopes to get people who may be unfamiliar with the feminine demographics of manga to try some out. There's often the misconception that shoujo and josei is just romance, and that is just not true. There's genres of all kinds under this demographic label. I will repeat myself again though that this series is not meant to be one-to-one comparisons of the manga I'm recommending. The premise is just so I can boost lesser known shoujosei titles that I think are in the similar vein to more popular series. Whether it be the vibes, the writing, or the synopsis, none of these series that I'm going to be recommending will be exactly the same. I personally just think fans of one may end up being fans of another. And as per usual, the last thing on my list of disclaimers is that all of the series I'm going to be recommending will be officially available in English in some way. Any manga that is incomplete, out of print, or not licensed will not be showing up in this series, at least today and prior. Since this series I do is meant for beginners to shoujosei, I want it to be easily accessible series that they could buy in stores or online this very second. This does cut out a lot of series that I would love to talk about, but I'm helping the hojos, not myself. Wow, they're so selfless. Since we now have that all out of the way, let's get into it. Today, I've got 5 shoujosei manga recs that you may just end up being obsessed with. If you liked Haikyuu, you might like Chihayafuru. This matchup was basically inevitable. It was just a matter of when I was going to be putting this one out rather than if. One of my favorite sports series with my favorite series ever, period. I figured now was just as optimal time as any though, since the Haikyuu movie just came out in Japan, kind of putting it back into the limelight. I'm always looking to take advantage of anything that's currently popular in the zeitgeist, especially when that means I get to introduce you to the best creation on earth, Chihayafuru. Chihayafuru is a josei sports drama series that is currently completed in Japan, but is still being released in English. As many of you might know, this whole manga is my entire personality. I mean, I end every one of my videos telling you guys to read it, so you better have read it by now. New viewers, you're exempt. While this series is super popular overseas, it tends to fly under the radar in the States, despite the fact that it has an amazingly adapted 3-season anime and is just the pinnacle of perfection. The story centers on a young girl named Chihaya who has gone through her childhood with only one dream, supporting her sister's budding modeling career. That is until she befriends the new transfer student Arata, who helps her discover a passion all her own by introducing her to the sport of karate, a card game in Japan that meshes classic poetry along with reactionary speed. Chihaya quickly becomes enamored with this sport and pulls along her childhood friend Taichi as well. The 3 kids end up joining a local community karate club together to hone their skills. However, one day Arata announces that he will be moving away due to family issues, as well as Taichi going to school further away next year. This leaves Chihaya distraught, but she promises that they will all meet again as long as they continue to play karate. Also saying that in the meantime, she is going to aim to be the best karate player in Japan. Now in high school, Chihaya is looking to form a karate team all her own, only to be met with confusion by those around her of why she would want to play such an old game. When all hope seems lost, Chihaya meets Taichi once again, and he decides to help build a karate club together, all the while trying to reach teenage Arata who kindled their passion. Other than the fact that both Haikyuu and Chihaya Furu are sports related, I think they're both very similar in their overall messages as well. There's a focus on passion, drive, and connection to others. One big thing that Haikyuu gets praised for is the fact that it doesn't have the other teams be villains in the series, and Chihaya Furu is the same in that regard. You really get a sense for each character introduced, and by the end of each match, you're pretty much always going to be sad because you don't want either team to lose. Chihaya and Hinata are very similar main characters too. I know for a fact if you put these two characters in the same room together, they would end up being besties. They both have a very strong desire to be on a team and make lasting connections to others who have the same passion as them. They both have a natural talent that they start off with, but continually they have to hone their abilities to actually get better at their sport. In turn, getting to connect with their game of choice even further. Of course, since it's a sports series, the intensity of the matches in Chihaya Furu don't lack either. You may think that a game of memory matching set to slam poetry wouldn't make you jump out of your seat like a 40-year-old man watching a football game, but it absolutely does. The art makes you feel the movement of the hands cutting through the air to swipe cards, and if a character holds their breath, so do you. You'll be digging your nails into the palm of your hands with excitement during every game. As you could probably tell, I am very biased towards Chihaya Furu. I love this manga as if it were my own flesh and blood. It is one of the best anime and manga series out there, and it gets a serious lack of love from this community. Just because I'm biased though, doesn't mean I'm wrong, because I do also really love Haikyuu. It's in my top 5 manga. So take it from me, Haikyuu fans, because I am also one of you. I think anyone who is a fan of Haikyuu would love Chihaya Furu. It is a phenomenal story with amazing art and incredible writing. Currently, Chihaya Furu is licensed digitally by Kodansha with 42 volumes out right now. There's going to be 50 volumes in total, so if you start right now, you won't have to wait too long between the volumes to know how it wraps up. Lastly, if everyone buys digital copies of Chihaya Furu, maybe, just maybe, Chihaya Furu will get physical copies. I'm definitely not salty. I'm definitely not. If you liked A Silent Voice, you might like Life. Let's get this out of the way. No, I don't think just because A Silent Voice and A Sign of Affection both have deaf female leads that they are in any way similar stories. One is a drama, and the other is a fluffy romance. What A Silent Voice focuses on the most in its story is the bullying aspect and the ability to move forward. In that regard, Life is a much more fitting comparison since it directly deals with bullying and mental health issues. Life is a shoujo psychological drama series that actually started back in the 2000s. We did once have this series licensed by Tokyopop with physical copies, but whenever they went under, it ended up never getting completed. Never fear though, because Kodansha has recently rescued the license and has slowly been putting out the full series. Before we continue on though, I want to preface this recommendation with a trigger warning for content revolving around self-harm and abuse. If you can't deal with that, I would go ahead and skip to the next series. The story follows a junior high schooler named Ayumu who is very close to her friend from school. They do everything together, even trying to attend the same high school. But when Ayumu gets accepted and her friend doesn't, their relationship quickly goes south, sending Ayumu into a spiral. Unsure of how to vent her sadness, she begins to harm herself since it's the only way she thinks she can feel relief. Her struggles unfortunately don't end here though. Once in her new school, Ayumu lands herself in a bad crowd of girls who bully other people. The ringleader, Manami's boyfriend, even assaults Ayumu, and no one believes her when she tries to tell anyone. In fact, this ends up drawing the ire of the girls and Ayumu herself getting bullied. When she thinks all is lost with no one to turn to, she ends up finding refuge in a fellow classmate, Hattori. The cool, aloof girl who seems kind of like a lone wolf wolf type, but immediately helps out Ayumu and tries to pull her out of this situation. Both A Silent Voice and Life heavily deal with guilt and how this can lead teens down a bad path if they don't have support systems. Where these stories do diverge is who the main perspective falls onto. In Silent Voice, it's the one who is the former bully, and in Life, it is the one who is currently getting bullied. Although you could say that both Ayumu and Shoya carry immense guilt with them, it is for vastly different reasons, even if they deal with it in the same way. Ayumu becomes closed off to others, never really sure if she should be her true self or if she should just grit and bear it. Continually, she lets people walk over her because she feels guilty about what happened with her last friend, and she doesn't want to rock the boat again and get left alone. This plummets her confidence lower and lower until she ends up reaching a breaking point. Unlike A Silent Voice as well, Ayumu doesn't end up meeting her old friend who caused this guilt, but she meets a new friend. Someone that can show her she can change and she can be more confident in herself. Ayumu and Hattori's relationship is also as close to Yuri as you can get without not actually being Yuri. They are very codependent on one another and give each other confidence that no one else can. Life is a tragic and harrowing story, but it's just as much an uplifting one too. This despite all of the abuse that gets hurled at Ayumu over the course of the 20 volumes in this series. If you really liked A Silent Voice because of its themes around bullying, self-harm, and abuse, then I think you would find Life just as touching of a story. The manga is available once again from Kodansha in digital only, so be sure to get copies of Life if you want them in physical down the line at some point too. If you liked Detective Conan, you might like Usatoki Rhetoric. Detective shenanigans, hidden identities, and a good time. You can't ask for much more when it comes to a mystery series. Which is why, even though these two manga don't have too much in common outside of being in the same genre, I still do think that anyone who is a fan of Detective Conan would really enjoy Usatoki Rhetoric. I have actually talked about Usatoki Rhetoric in another video where I reviewed volume 1, but that one was a sponsored video from the publisher, so putting it in this video is just telling you that I actually did like it, I didn't just have to be paid to like it. Usatoki Rhetoric is a 10-volume shoujo mystery series that is currently being published by One Piece Books. It is an extremely fun time that has more of a mystery of the week format rather than a long, overarching narrative. Although some early stories will weave their way into later narratives as well. We follow a young girl in the 1920s named Kanoko, who has the peculiar ability to hear lies. This has gotten her in trouble over the years and eventually leads to her having to leave her hometown. She ends up trying to find work in another city where she meets a detective named Iwai Soma. Although he's very kind and helps Kanoko out, he quickly discovers her ability through his own deduction prowess. The only issue is that Iwai is a bit of a wild card. His detective agency isn't doing so hot despite his own talents, and he can't even pay for his own rent or meals. However, with the help of Kanoko's ability, she could bring in more work for the agency. Iwai ends up asking her to help out as his assistant, and while Kanoko is hesitant at first, she ultimately agrees, trying to find a place that she can belong. The two begin to solve countless mysteries together, and possibly getting themselves into dangerous situations. Although Detective Conan is much more high-intensity action, if you still really like the mystery-solving aspect and the lovable characters, then I think you'll still really enjoy Usatoki Rhetoric. While the cases they solve in it don't pack as much of a punch, there's still a lot of suspense to them. We find Kanoko trying to figure out the goings-on in a haunted house, or in the first chapter, she's trying to catch an arsonist. It's a very thrilling series when it needs to be, even if it is more lighthearted and calm just as often. The banter between Ran and Shinichi can be just as similar of a dynamic between Kanoko and Iwai. Kanoko is a bit of the straight man sometimes when it comes to the aloof and hardly ever serious Iwai. However, she can be just as unserious and goofy herself when she wants to be. In fact, throughout the first couple of volumes, she starts to relax a bit more herself. Kanoko and Iwai really bring out the best in each other, and they make each other's talent shine in ways they never thought they could before. Honestly, I don't know how popular Detective Conan is these days, but when I was a kid, it was a very popular series that was all over Toonami. If you're looking for a more modern series that maybe isn't hundreds of volumes long, then I would really recommend you check out Usatoki Rhetoric. Right now, there are 5 out of 10 volumes available in English, so you can catch up pretty quick before it wraps up. And you know where you can get some of these series? From today's sponsor. Thank you to Walt's Comic Shop. Are you in need for some English language manga and live in the EU? Then Walt's Comic Shop is what you need. They have thousands of manga currently in stock with an inventory that's growing daily. Walt's offers low shipping prices for any EU country, with bulletproof packaging and speedy customer support. If you enter the code Colleen's Manga Rex at checkout, you'll get free shipping on your first order of €40. Get series like Usatoki Rhetoric and many more at waltscomicshop.com, your #1 source for English language manga in Europe. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the next recommendation. If you liked Inuyasha, you might like Red River. In the year of our Lord Yumi Tamura 2024, I cannot believe that I am about to say this. Red River, the Red River, one of the staple shoujo isekai, is getting re-released in a 3-in-1 omnibus version by Viz. And it's coming this fall. My ears are twitching because the sounds coming out of my mouth are hitting my ears and it doesn't seem real still. Well, during the wait for this re-release, you can still read Red River on the Viz app if you live in the States. Anyway, Inuyasha and Red River are a no-brainer comparison. 2 beloved isekais set in a far distant past with young girls becoming heroes. They may both seem a little dated with the plots or the jokes at times, but you can't help but be enamored with the worlds they are set in and the characters that are shown. Red River is about a 15-year-old girl named Yuri who just got her first boyfriend and passed her high school entrance exams. Everything seems to be looking up for her lately, yet something has been off. Anytime she's near water, it tries to grab her, yanking her into whatever it comes out of, like a fish tank, the bathtub, or a puddle. Eventually, it succeeds, pulling her through a portal, and Yuri finds herself in a completely different country and era. Yuri ended up in ancient Anatolia, where she gets rescued from danger by the Prince Kyle. It turns out that the prince's stepmother pulled Yuri from her era as a blood sacrifice to make sure that her son becomes the successor instead of Kyle. In order to return back to her era, Yuri must defeat the evil queen as well as any other dangers that she may face in this olden day era. Once again, I think it's a pretty straightforward comparison. I think you guys know where my brain is at when I pick these 2 out. Inuyasha is an isekai set in another time period, as is Red River. However, I would even go so far as saying that the main characters of Kagome and Yuri are pretty similar too. They're both very spunky characters that are able to fight back against their enemies, quickly getting used to the worlds that they've fallen into and the short-tempered men that they meet. They both do fall into the damsel in distress trope at times, but they can fight their way out with their sharp wit. Where some people may find Red River dated is the early portrayal of Kyle. He has his way with Yuri in the first few volumes, which would put a lot of people off from wanting to read it. I was also iffy at first when I read, I think, the first 3 volumes of Red River, but he does get better throughout the rest of the series. It is a manga from the 90s, so you do just kind of have to compartmentalize while you're reading it. If you can't or don't want to though, there's your fair warning. Maybe you just want to pass this one up. I do still think that Red River is well worth the read though, since it's a pretty good example of the staple early shoujo isekais. The premise of the series is very creative, and not just because of the premise, but because of where it's set in. There's not many manga series that are set in ancient Anatolia or in West Asia. Like I said earlier, if you don't want to wait for the re-release, which comes out in the fall, you can still read Red River on the Viz app. There's about 28 volumes in total. It is an epic adventure story, and I highly recommend it for anyone who just wants a good early 90s isekai. If you liked Bride's Story, you might like Gold Kingdom and Water Kingdom. Last but not least for this round of recommendations is a series that I've talked a lot about before. Gold Kingdom and Water Kingdom was a series that I was really hoping we would get an English release for after I heard it would be getting a movie anime adaptation. Lucky for me, only a couple months after I was saying I wanted the series in English, the 1-volume omnibus was announced from Seven Seas. I won't say that I made it happen, but come on guys, I think we all know I made it happen. This manga is a wonderful josei fantasy story that is set in a fictional universe where two countries have been going to war over petty squabbles. The final straw was an incident involving dog poop before the gods intervened. It was decided in a bid to make peace that both kingdoms must send their wisest man and most beautiful woman to get married. However, both kingdoms would rather prank the other than actually make peace. Instead of sending people, both of the kingdoms sent animals. Sarah, who was meant to be wed, was sent a puppy, while Naranbayar, who was meant to be her husband, was sent a kitten. Since the two of them both didn't want to cause a war, they hid the fact from others that the person they were supposed to marry never showed up. By a twist of fate though, they end up meeting face to face when Sarah's puppy falls into a hole and Naranbayar just so happens to be passing by. I would say the two biggest similarities between Bride Story and Gold Kingdom Water Kingdom is in their setups as well as their highly detailed, beautiful illustrations. Firstly, for the setups, it's quite simple. Two characters who are meant to marry each other who have never met before and are uniting two groups of people. One of which having to learn about the other person's culture and becoming more accustomed to how things work in their kingdom. I would say that premise for both is pretty cut and dry. The second commonality is the beautiful artwork that makes the world these characters live in feel like they're radiating off the page. Gold Kingdom and Water Kingdom may be set in a fictional universe, but it seems to take inspiration from West or Central Asian cultures, much like Bride Story is. The detailed patterns of the buildings, clothes, and backgrounds in this story make you feel like you could step right into them. They have a very familiar air about them that feels both fantastical as well as lived in. Outside of the similarities, the characters in this story are just so likable and easy to root for. The challenges that Sarah and Naranbayar face together are done head on and as a team. Neither of them knowing that they were meant to marry the other, but getting along all the same despite their kingdom's differences. Their romance is just surprisingly sweet for how short this series is. By the end, you're left completely satisfied, but at the same time, because it's so good, you kind of just still want more of the story. I think anyone who loves Bride Story will find something to enjoy in Gold Kingdom and Water Kingdom. It's a short and sweet tale that combines the fantastical worlds of faraway lands with romance that can be found at home. The manga only has one omnibus volume, so it's a very easy purchase with very little commitment. I hope you guys check this series out because I would really love some more stories from this author, especially her recent fantasy series, which is called The Seven Knights of the Marionette Kingdom. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. I'll hear from the French people. All right, and with that, we have come to the end of the 5th installment of my series, Making the Shonen Jump to Shoujo. As always, I hope there was at least one shoujosei series on this list that caught your eye and maybe made you want to try it out. I know that I've definitely recommended all of the series I put in this video on my channel before, or I've at least mentioned them before. So if you're not new to my content, if you've watched other videos of mine, some of these recommendations may not feel very new. So if you're in that category, just take this video as a reminder to go read those series if you haven't already. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Making the Shonen Jump to Shoujo. Thank you, my hojos, for watching. Welcome to any new hojos. Read Chihaya Furu. And I'll see you guys in the next video.